Anyway, thanks for bearing with me with that. So I was talking about this week. So Wednesday, we're going to have a quiz. It'll be one of these 10 question short, just check up quizzes on chapters 1 through 4 of Lord of the Flies. And then right after that, the rest of the day, Wednesday and Thursday, will be writing days for the op-ed. Friday, we'll come back with another one of our tribal challenges, and we'll talk about the next 2 chapters then as well. So that's an overview. And some of you, or hopefully all of you, are aware, Wednesday you have an early dismissal, 2-hour early dismissal. Classes are a little bit shorter. They're like 40 minutes or so, but basically the same, not vastly changed. Okay, so any questions about this week or assignments, anything like that? I'm not sure about the 35-minute lunch period. I would have to double check. They did send out the schedule. I just don't have it up now, but I would imagine that they kept it if they were to, I don't know. I'll look and tell you. But what I want to do to start today is, we have, we're coming back from the weekend, so I want to ease into things. Thought I'd just start with a discussion and show you a video. Oh, they didn't keep the lunch? Oh, okay, that makes sense. So I want to show you a video that'll lead into a discussion that'll relate to the book. So let me pull it up. By the way, here's our objective slide. So today we're mostly going to be looking at Ralph and Jack and their differing viewpoints on what to do with their time on the island. Make sure you read chapter 4 for tomorrow. So here's my question for you that we'll think about and watch this video about. Is independence good or bad for children? And obviously it's a spectrum, it's a balance. So how do you know what the right amount of independence is? Do kids have too much or too little today? Or are parents monitoring kids too closely? There's a stereotype out there of the helicopter parent, right? Always monitoring what kids are doing and kind of stifling them. So is that true? I'm sure you already have some opinions about that, but the video I'm going to show you is about how overparenting backfired on Americans is about this. It's an interview with a social psychologist named Jonathan Haidt, who's he's been in the news and on the internet making the rounds for the past few years about this issue. And he has a very strong viewpoint about it. You'll see what his view is. And so I'm just kind of curious to see if you agree with this. And obviously, Lord of the Flies is the ultimate example of childhood independence, right? It really says, take very young kids, put them on an island. What happens? Is that good for them or not? So let's see what he says, and then I'll ask you for your reactions. All right.
American parenting really changed in the 1990s. When I'm talking about the book, I go around the country, I ask audiences, at what age were you let out? At what age could you go outside and play with your friends with no adult supervising? And I say, only people over 40. What's your answer? Call it out. And it's 5, 7, 8, 6, 5, 7. It's always 5 to 8. That's what we always did. Between 5 and 8, kids could go outside without an adult. They'd get in arguments, they would play games, they would make rules. They were independent. They got years and years of practicing independence. Then I say, just people under 25. What year were you let out? 12, 14, 13, 16. Nobody says 10 or younger. In the 1990s, as the crime rate was plummeting, as American life was getting safer and safer, Americans freaked out and thought that if they take their eyes off their children, the children will be abducted. Now, this goes back, the fear was stoked by cable TV in the 1980s. There were a few high-profile abductions. But it's not until the 1990s that we really start locking kids up and saying, you cannot be outside until you're 14 or 15. We took this essential period of childhood from about 8 to 12, when kids throughout history have practiced independence, have gotten into adventures, have made rafts and floated down the Mississippi River. We took that period and said, you don't get to practice independence until it's too late, until that period is over. Now, a couple years before you go to college, now you can go outside. Oh, okay, go off to college. And a lot of them are not ready. They're just not used to being independent. When they get to college, they need more help. They're asking adults for more help. Protect me from this, punish him for saying that, protect me from that book. There's a very sharp change with kids who were born in 1995 and afterwards, surprisingly sharp. Jean Twenge, in her book iGen, analyzes surveys of behavior of time use. And beginning with kids born in 1995, they spend a lot less time going out with friends. They don't get a driver's license as often. They don't drink as much. They don't go out on dates. They don't work for money as much. What are they doing? They're spending a lot more time sitting on their beds with their devices, interacting that way. These are the first kids who got social media when they were 13, roughly. They were subjected to much more anti-bullying content in their schools, much more adult supervision. They were raised in the years after 9/11. They were given much less recess and free play with No Child Left Behind. There was much more testing pushed down into earlier grades. We don't know if this is for sure the reason, but they seem to have more difficulty working out problems on their own. The most common thing I hear is that members of Gen Z, if they overhear a joke, if they overhear someone say something, they'll get offended and then they'll go straight to HR. They'll go straight to somebody to file a complaint, where previous generations would have either just shaken it off and just said, jerk or asshole or whatever. I think there are a couple things we can say. One is you have to take charge of device use and social media. We don't know for sure, but it looks like a 2-hour limit per day is probably a good idea. Keeping kids off of social media as long as possible is a good idea. It's very hard to do this as one parent when your kids' friends are not limited. So you've got to talk to your kids' friends and all have a common front, all have a common policy, then go to the schools. Schools can solve these problems collectively in ways that individual parents cannot. Outside of school, go to letgrow.org, an organization, a wonderful new organization started by Lenore Skenazy, who wrote the book Free Range Kids. She became famous as America's worst mom because in 2009, she let her 9-year-old son ride the New York City subway. Not only did he survive, he was thrilled. He felt he'd learned something. He felt he could go out into the world. Give childhood back to kids so that they do what they most need to do, which is develop the skills of being an independent adult. Remember that the job of a parent is to work him or herself out of a job.
All right. I'm not necessarily endorsing his viewpoint, but I think he makes an interesting point. And there are kind of two parts to this. One is the issue of what is the right amount of independence for kids to have? And the other part is he connects that to issues in like cancel culture and political correctness and says like this results in prolonged adolescence or learned helplessness. So as kids yourself who are confined by parents' boundaries, I'm curious to see your reaction to this. Actually, why don't we start by just throwing out there, he mentions that he polls audiences and asks them when you were first allowed to go out on your own. What about you guys? Maybe you could just put it in the chat. At what age were you allowed to go outside unsupervised? Wow, 5? Really providing a solid counter example to him. Clue 73. Always been allowed. Okay, actually substantially lower than he said. He was saying he hasn't heard anyone less than 10 who was able to go out. Kind of interesting. I'll share a personal story. I mean, I grew up in the 90s as well, so I was like part of that first wave of overparenting, if such a thing exists. My mom was definitely overprotective. I remember I was in elementary school, probably like fourth grade, and I got a new bike, and I was really excited about it. And I usually took the bus to school, but I wanted to ride my bike to school, and I kept bugging my mom about it. And finally, she relented and let me. But she was worried about me riding my bike to school on my own. So for the first few days, I rode my bike, and she drove her car like right beside me to make sure that I got to school safe. So yeah, it's a thing, overparenting. So what? Now that I'm hearing your ages that you're able to go out, what do you guys think about what Jonathan Haidt's saying? Is he onto something, or is this overblown? Go ahead, Kendall.
I think that it's a little overblown. Like, I grew up, my mom was pretty overprotective. My dad was pretty lenient. So, with my dad, he would let us walk around the neighborhood, and he didn't live in a great neighborhood at the time. So, it was kind of sketchy just letting a 5 and 7 year old run around. But he did, and we met some nice neighbors. We went into a few people's houses, and we were fine. Like, nothing bad ever came from it, and I just think he's blowing it a little out of proportions.
Okay, I appreciate your perspective. Karina, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess. I grew up across from a park and with a like really close next door neighbor. So, like with my parents knowing that, I had a lot more I guess I was just allowed to do more because I was like I could play right in front of our house and be with neighbors, and I definitely think that overparenting has become a bad issue, but I feel like there's a lot of different factors that come into it. Like obviously if you live in the middle of Philadelphia, you probably wouldn't let your kid just like go out and walk around the city for however long he wants, but I mean, we are living in the suburbs of Chester County, so it does make a difference.
It's true. Although, also to Kendall's point, even if you were raised in a not so great area, like a lot of times the fears of living in, not great areas, I think are also overblown. Like you can walk around in what might be considered a sketchy area a lot of times, and like nothing bad is going to happen. You're just going to walk outside. So place definitely does play a role in it, but I see your point. Okay, Emma.
I don't think it's really overblown because I know as a kid, like my mom only really first started letting me go out on my own like in 8th grade-ish, 7th, 8th grade-ish. But I think the only reason she let me out was because I had my phone and she could track me to wherever I went. So she's like, she knew where I was going. Then my dad would always talk about like how he's a kid. He's like, yeah, I would like bike miles and miles away. And I'm like, he admits that we're kind of very overprotected because we're not allowed to go anywhere without telling my mom where we're going, when we'll be home, how long we'll be out. She checks in like every 20 minutes. And it's kind of like very on your shoulder about it. So yeah.
Wow. This reminds me of something my seniors told me about. You guys probably know about this. It's an app. I think it's called like Life 365. Is that it?
Yeah, that's the one my mom uses on me.
Yeah, like that seems pretty intense. Life 365. Oh, Life 360. Okay. Yeah, that's the next level, I think, of monitoring. And I mean, I get it because my mom always tells me like when I complain to her that she's being like worrying too much or being overprotective, she always says like, I'll understand when I have a kid. So maybe I'm sure if I had a child, like I would want to make sure they're safe. So like I get it, but also it is very different than the past. Okay, Alex next.
I don't think It was like I feel like he was kind of accurate because it's not very clear cut when it comes to overparenting, I think, because some situations might be worse than others, like how Emma was talking about with like where she's going and like internet and like restrictions on that. But going out, I feel like that wasn't really an issue, at least for me and a lot of my friends.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an individual thing, and we could always find outliers. We're not doing like a rigorous study here, so we can't like really tell whether there's some big change over time in when kids are going out. Um, but but yeah, certainly, some people stay out are able to have more autonomy than others. Let me go with Olivia next.
Um, I'm not sure if this is the right word for it, but I was thinking maybe like it used to be almost ignorance is bliss, since like mentioning technology, it just makes parents more aware of the possibilities of what your child could be getting into. Where even for like me and my brother, who are a good age gap younger than my older sisters, we have a little less restrictions on us. And I think that's even changed in the past like 10 years, not just from generation like X. So I think it's just like the fact that they don't know means that they don't have to worry. And as long as I guess they got home safe, as what I've heard from my parents, that was their rule.
Yeah,
So,
it is interesting hearing from like people in Gen X or boomers about like how much freedom they have because they talk very proudly about being able to go out in the morning, play with friends, and come home at dinner time and like that was that. And like go wander miles away, explore abandoned places, play in the woods, and that being like an experience that helps build character. Um, but yeah, like how much of that is just looking at the past through rose-colored glasses? Maybe some of it. Maybe we are better off knowing where our kids are. Um, it's hard to tell. Okay, Kendall again.
I just want to piggyback on what Emma said about phones. I agree that a lot of parents nowadays really do feel more comfortable with letting their child places with a phone. Like personally, my mom has Life 360 and is constantly stalking it. So I feel like if she didn't have that, she'd still be a little weirded out by me going places, even though like it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's not like I'm at risk, like I'm 7 years old. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little blown out of proportions.
Hmm.
But phones really make it easier for parents to accept that.
Yeah, so you're saying that having like Life 360 eases fears or adds to them?
Of parents, yeah.
I feel like in a way it might create a vicious cycle where you get some surveillance and then you want more and more, and then the more access you have, like the more you want it to know, and then I don't know. That's what I would guess would happen, but maybe not. Um, okay, I mean, obviously there are a lot of viewpoints here. We could keep sharing personal examples, but I want to get to the reading. I mean, but again, the point here is like, what is the right amount of independence, and is more needed. Like I said in Lord of the Flies, this is the ultimate example of pure independence. The book itself is a parody of books that were popular in the time period, adventure stories about kids who run away from home, go on adventures, and achieve this ultimate freedom, which is the dream of lots of kids, is get escaping from parental rules. And then it's just kind of a natural thought experiment of, okay, if you did give kids ultimate freedom, what would they do with that? Would they use it wisely or poorly? Is some amount of authority necessary, even if it might impinge on freedoms? Okay, so let's take out our books and look at that. And I guess my first question will be, how do the boys react to their freedom on the island initially? In chapter 2, how are they feeling about discovering that this is an island and there's no one else on it? Yes, Kendall.
Some of them are kind of happy, some of them are kind of like worried, and they make the fire at the top to as a signal fire. But then later on, as the story progresses, Ralph keeps trying to make houses with Simon, and Jack keeps hunting, but all the rest of the boys, they just kind of relax and use this as vacation time instead of trying to help themselves survive.
Yeah, good. So you're mentioning a couple big ideas that we'll get to talk about later in the period, but absolutely for most of the boys, it seems like a vacation. It seems like an opportunity to have fun. Even Ralph even says, we're going to get rescued, but also this is our chance to have fun. So that it's kind of like party time for them. Actually, before we get too into a discussion of chapters 2 and 3, I had some review questions of chapter 1 that I wanted to go over, and these will be helpful for our quiz on Wednesday, things that you should know. And then we'll circle back and continue to talk about Ralph and the fire on the mountain. Okay, so take a second, look at these. They're all from chapter 1. So first off, what can we tell from the plane crash was happening in the rest of the world while the boys are here on the island? Someone put something in the chat, but my chat's being really laggy and it's not opening. So Dave, I'll go with you.
There's probably some kind of like massive disaster or war that's forcing like these schoolboys to be transported like off of one place to go to another.
Yeah, exactly. Probably that's an evacuation. It seems like their plane was shot down, and they even refer to an atomic bomb. So the story takes place during the Cold War. So maybe there's some nuclear war going on, and the boys are fleeing for their lives. Okay, 2. What are the physical features that mark Piggy as an outcast? I would identify 3 of them specifically. What are they? Let me hear from someone new. Sorry, Dave. Three things that have to do with his appearance. Well, I guess one isn't really his appearance. I've heard from Kendall too. Let me hear from someone I haven't heard from yet. Well, I've heard from Alex, but not as much. So sure, we'll go with Alex.
He's like heavier than the other boys, so it makes him stand out.
Good, that's one. Yeah. What are the 2 other ones? Alex or anyone else?
Would you say like he has asthma as his physical thing?
Yeah, so that's another one. He can't swim or run or engage in physical activity, as readily as Ralph or Jack can. The other thing has to do with something he wears.
His glasses, right?
Yeah, his glasses too. So all these things mark him as like the stereotypical nerd, as someone who's in some way different, even though there's stupid reasons to ostracize someone. He's treated as an outsider, but he does have some really good ideas, and he's the most mature of the boys on the island. Right? And going along with this, how does Ralph betray Piggy after they initially meet? Yes, Quinn. I don't know if you're trying to talk right now, but can't hear anything. Are you having mic issues? Yeah, still nothing. Sorry, Quinn. I'll let you mess around with that, but I'm sure you have the right answer, but we'll go with Olivia instead.
Piggy says to not call him basically the name Piggy, and Ralph calls him that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then it also tells everyone that name, which causes them to erupt in laughter. So we never actually learn Piggy's name. He's just Piggy to us. He's defined as, the victim of bullying. Okay. 4, what does the book indicate is the main reason that Ralph is chosen to be leader? There are a couple listed, but there's one that it really emphasizes. Yes, Dave.
They chose him because he was the one with the conch shell that like united them all.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one who blows the conch, who summons them all together. So just having this object that draws everyone in, kind of signifies, this is someone with a plan, right? This is someone who demands our attention, like adults demand our attention. Therefore, we should listen to him. So he's kind of subconsciously associated with authority, but he's also kind of tall and assertive and attractive, and these qualities are usually associated with leadership. So there's that as well. Right. Lastly, what is the thing that Jack is unable to do at the end of chapter 1 that he wants to do, but can't bring himself to? Yes, Margot.
He can't kill the piglet that's trapped in the creepers.
Yeah, very good. He wants to, kill this piglet, prove that he's a strong hunter, but he's still a little kid. He's still scared, and he can't actually take another living being's life. Okay, very good. Make sure you know all that stuff, and it's all good, Quinn. It's a weird technical issue. So let's go to chapter 2 again. So the conch we see in chapter 1 is used to summon everyone, kind of represents this coming together. It takes on new symbolic significance in chapter 2. What's the new rule that Ralph declares associated with the conch? Yes, David. What about the conch?
So when they're all meeting, Ralph says that it's too confusing when everyone's speaking at once. So whoever's holding the conch shell is the one that can speak.
Yeah, exactly. The conch is the thing that not only unites everyone, it maintains order, right? It's equivalent to raising your hand in class. If you want to speak to one at a time, and you have the person who has it gets the floor, gets everyone's respect. How does that work out for the boys over the course of that chapter? Yeah, Kendall.
Not very well, and everyone keeps trying to speak over each other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at first, like they kind of are smitten with the idea. I think again because it's almost like they're playing at being legislators, like they're playing at being in Congress and are making rules. But when it comes down to it, that like Jack especially wants to say what he wants to say, and he doesn't want to be forced to abide by rules, right? Especially poor Piggy gets ignored all the time. He tries to warn everyone to be careful lighting the fire. He has the conch, people keep talking over him. So they try to make rules and then almost immediately they give up on them. What's also funny is in the beginning of chapter 2, Jack's really excited about having rules. He says, we'll have rules, lots of rules. Then when anyone breaks them, and then he cuts off. And it's funny, then when anyone breaks them, it seems like he's excited to have rules just so he'll get to punish people who break the rules, not so much for the good of the rules themselves. Okay. So the boys are all excited about this island that seems like a paradise. Yet in chapter 2, we get this first glimpse at not all is well. And we get that glimpse from this little boy, 6 years old about, with this birthmark on his face. and he comes forward to tell the rest of the boys on the island about something that he saw. What does this little boy warn the group about? Thinks he saw something. Kendall, what did he see?
A big snake.
Yeah, some snake or a monster slithering around in the darkness. Now, if you are reading literature and you see a snake, especially one out in nature, your biblical illusion alarms should be going off. We might be thinking here, knowing that the boys are on this paradise kind of island, and there's a snake slithering around, a giant monster, scary snake. We might be thinking of the Garden of Eden here, another paradise with a snake or as Satan hiding inside of it, which is something to keep in mind as we continue reading. And he's not really sure. It's a snake-like thing. Maybe he dreamed it, but they start calling it the beastie and worrying about it coming out at night. Maybe they're not alone on this island. Maybe there's something else here. Okay. That brings them to the top of the island where they make a signal fire because Ralph wants to make sure if any ships go by, they'll be seen. How do they actually light the signal fire? And then what goes wrong after they light it? Sorry, Kendall. Again, why don't I hear from someone new? How do they light the signal fire? And what goes wrong with it? Do they use sticks? Do they use matches? Leo, what do they do?
I think it's either Ralph or Jack, and they take Piggy's spectacles and they start like using it as like a bow to twist the fire, and then the fire like starts to erupt. And I think Jack tells everyone to go get more wood, and the fire just keeps on burning, burning, and burning, and just starts going all over the place. Yeah,
good. So they just snatch Piggy's glasses off his face without asking him. Another way that Piggy is, exploited by the boys and bullied by them. But note also that now, without Piggy, they wouldn't have this fire. It's like glasses or this technology that allows them to survive. They have these big plans, but they never actually think them through. If Piggy weren't there, they would just have this massive damp wood. They wouldn't be able to do anything with it. And then they get carried away. The fire goes like 20 feet in the air. It bursts up. They keep throwing more wood on it, and it starts to spread and burn up some of the top of the island until it kind of burns itself out. And then the chapter ends after it burns itself out. Who has gone missing now? Anyone catch that detail? How about Dave?
It's the same little kid that told them about the snake.
Yeah, so this is a subtle detail, but it's interesting. They don't really say what happened to him, but Piggy is like that little one. By the way, you'll note that Piggy and the other boys will refer to little ones like little ones. Little ones are just the phrase that they have invent for the smallest kids on the island, the youngest kids. But this kid has disappeared. We're left to, fear, infer that maybe he's been killed in this wildfire that the boys inadvertently set by being too enthusiastic with the signal fire. Okay, chapter 3 goes into more depth with Jack's changes as he's starting to become more of the hunter and embodying that role and doing the hunting because it's fun, but the hard work of surviving, like building a shelter, no one wants to do that except for Ralph Piggy and Simon, who's helping out. We'll get into more of that tomorrow. And we'll also talk about chapter 4 tomorrow. So please read chapter 4 for homework. But that's about the end of class. Any questions for me before we head out?